So the veteran that I had the privilege of interviewing for this assignment was my dad. His name is Eric Santana, and he was in the United States Marine Corps. He joined when he was only 17 years old, and the reason he decided to join the military was because my mom was pregnant with me, and he needed a job. He originally always wanted to be a cop, but he was too young to join, so he decided to join the Marine Corps instead. And even still, then he needed his parents to sign permission for him to even join the military. Um, my dad stated that when he first told his family and my mom that he wanted to join, everyone was indifferent. He doesn't really have too much memory about, that experience, but that it was, neither a good nor a bad experience. He chose to join the Marine Corps because he had cousins who were Marines, and he always knew that they were the best branch to join. So the recruiting process was easy for him. There wasn't much recruiting that they had to do on their end. He already knew he wanted to join the Marines, and he already knew what job he wanted to do. So they didn't really need to do much recruitment. He didn't participate much in like the recruitment activities. So when it came time for boot camp, it was a total shell shock for him. Back then, it wasn't like how it is now, where there's the internet and um, you kind of, Google and watch videos and stuff to kind of prepare yourself for boot camp. He went in totally blindsided, and he remembers saying to himself, "What the F did I do?" throughout the first few days of boot camp. My dad completed boot camp at Paris Island, and he made sure to note that only real Marines come out of Paris Island, and the Marines coming out of boot camp in California are Hollywood Marines. I found this very interesting because Marine life in itself is a very like unique culture. But even within that system, there are sort of subgroups that separate, Paris Island Marines to, the Hollywood Marines, like my dad liked to call them. When going into the military, boot camp reprograms you. You come out of there a totally different person. And when my dad came home from boot camp, it was odd for him because he went home still with like that boot camp and military mindset. He expressed how my mom cried pretty much the whole time during his visit, and that people were kind of looking at him crazy. He said that he felt very confused, and this was kind of the first experiences where he felt misunderstood. My dad stated that transitioning from civilian life to being a service member was natural to him. He was so young, and this was his first job, so he adapted quickly to the culture and the environment. My dad expressed how joining the military was the greatest thing he ever did, but it was also the worst decision of his life. He says that because he felt as though he spent way too much time away from me and missed out on the first 3 years of my life. My dad was in MCT training when I was first born, and he got the call. He did miss my birth, but he was able to spend 3 days with me and my mom before he had to go back. He remembers having to have his schooling cut short because they were going to be deployed to the Persian Gulf War. Um, he ended up in Somalia, and this is when all hell broke loose for him. This was um, where all of his PTSD stems from. He still has vivid memories of being shot at, all the fighting, the death, and the kids crying. What bothered him the most was hearing the kids crying, hearing gunshots, and then silence. The crying stopped. So you can only imagine, what happened in that situation. Um, During times of war, he didn't have time to cry or be upset about, the horrible things happening around him. He had to survive. He had to suppress and numb away all those feelings. This is something that he still struggles with till this day. This whole experience affected him. Imagine being, 18 years old with a new baby and a young wife, and you have to write a will. That is, traumatic on its own. Um, he was in Somalia for 4 months, but that was the most traumatic experience of his life. And he grew up in, New York City during the 80s, so you can imagine how bad that was for him. My dad expressed that the worst part about the experience was that when it was finally over, he missed it. Even till this day, he craves the chaos. Back then, it was like a drug to him, and that's kind of when he knew he had to get out before it was kind of over for him. Um, he hasn't been in for over 30 years, and he's still affected by his deployment out to war. My dad emphasized that not all of the experience was bad. He did get to travel the world and visit some of the most beautiful places like Hong Kong and Singapore. He made great friends, and he built a lot of he gained a lot of life skills that he was able to incorporate into, his everyday life. Um, he did state that he wished people would know, like, that telling him thank you for your service is one of the most awkward things for him to hear. And I can attest to that as well. It's a pretty awkward situation. He wished there was more of a transition process for service members so that they are more prepared for the civilian world. Um, my dad expressed that transitioning from military life to civilian life was a struggle for him because he felt as though the life he lived was all a lie. He had to become something that he really wasn't. He felt like he had nothing in common with anyone. And that is something that he still feels to this day. Even after 30 years, he feels as though he lives a dual life, that he needs to put on a mask to survive in the civilian world, and is still not trusting of others. Um, Coming out, my dad didn't know anything about the VA until I got out of the military and told him about it. He believes that everyone should join the military and that he feels lucky that, after all of, the trauma and the PTSD that he experienced, he didn't turn to drugs or alcohol, um, or let the PTSD make him like abusive towards his family. Currently, my dad is in therapy working through his PTSD and anger issues. I can tell that it's working because growing up, he would never have been able to talk about his experiences while being deployed. And even during our interview, I made sure to ask if he was okay to talk about it, and he was fine with it. After the interview, I felt, very proud and honored that he was able to talk to me about that time in his life. And because I know how, how hard it is for not only him, but other, um, veterans who experienced wartime. So yeah, I was very grateful for that. And yeah, thank you for listening. And I hope you enjoyed it.